Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. That simple gesture, backed by the frigid school will evolving incantation, as well as his gold core, caused frigid chi from the frigid adept level to surge out, distorting the air as it shot to meet the four-colored ice flower. When they made contact, a huge boom echoed out in all directions. 3 of the flower's petals shattered into ash, but the final one only grew larger, transforming into an ice blade that sliced through Bai Xiaochun's frigid chi and continued onward. The shocking speed of the ice blade caused Bai Xiaochun's expression to flicker. After making contact with the ice flower, his frigid adept power had been almost completely sucked away, and as the ice blade neared, the intense cold caused his blood to begin to freeze up. Thankfully, in addition to his Heaven Dao Gold Core, he also had his undying Heavenly King Core, which vibrated as it stimulated his fleshly body power. As the ice blade neared, Bai Xiaochun howled and clenched his right hand into a fist, which he punched out at the ice blade. A huge boom could be heard as the ice blade shattered into bits. At the same time, Bai Xiaochun coughed up a mouthful of blood and then looked down to see the flesh of his right hand shredded and bleeding. However, now was not the time to retreat. Instead, he blurred into motion, heading directly toward the statue of Gongsun Waner, unleashing more frigid chi and using his frigid shadows to perform a minor teleportation. Shockingly, he appeared right in front of the expressionless Gongsun Waner, whereupon his left leg swept out in a kick, backed by the full fleshly body power of his undying tendons. In the same moment that Bai Xiaochun attacked, Gongsun Waner, seemingly ignoring him, performed an incantation gesture with her left hand and then pushed her finger down onto her forehead. As she did, a burst of frigid chi emerged that vastly surpassed that from before. Everything around her instantly froze, and at the same time, an enormous ice hand materialized behind her, which shot toward Bai Xiaochun as if to grab him. Bai Xiaochun had already sent his foot flying through the air with explosive power, so it smashed into the ice hand, destroying most of it. However, the hand still continued onward to slam into Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun was sent spinning backward, blood spraying from his mouth. And yet, his eyes shone with ferocious light as he completely ignored his own injuries and once again summoned a frigid shadow as he prepared to teleport to safety. As he did, his expression flickered as he realized that Gongsun Waner's frigid chi had formed something like a sealing power, a barrier that obstructed his ability to change locations with his frigid shadows. As for the mostly destroyed ice hand, it quickly repaired itself, and then began to grow larger. In the blink of an eye, it was fully 300 meters tall, and once again began to rumble through the air toward Bai Xiaochun. Up to this point, Bai Xiaochun hadn't even been able to get close to Gongsun Waner, who currently stood behind the ice hand, staring at him coldly. The ice hand closed in, growing larger the entire time, until it was more than 3,000 meters tall. Bai Xiaochun's pupils constricted as he realized that he wasn't sure what to do at this point. For the entire time during this fight, he had been reacting, and had yet to take the initiative. If he couldn't turn things around, then he would surely meet defeat. So, you want to compete in terms of frigid chi? Fine, let's do it. Anxiety for the safety of Big Fatty Zhang was the most important thing right now, so Bai Xiaochun knew that if he couldn't defeat this statue of Gongsun Waner, he wouldn't get into the violet trial. Therefore, he took a deep breath and then drew upon a vast amount of frigid chi from his gold core, all of which he converged upon his right hand, causing it to turn a deep blue color. Then, he shoved his blue hand directly toward the ground. Frigid mountain. Rumbling sounds echoed out as the frigid chi exploded downward toward the ground, causing a mountain of ice to form, and freezing everything in the area. Even as the ice hand closed in, the mountain of ice rose up hundreds of meters into the air. Then, the two forces met. He was drawing upon so much frigid chi that his chi passageways were pulsing with pain, and yet, he didn't seem to notice. He was drawing upon virtually all of the frigid chi his gold core was capable of, completely regardless of the consequences. It almost seemed like an insane suicide attack. The ice mountain continued to grow rapidly, until it was also 3,000 meters tall. That was when the ice hand reached it. Detonate! Bai Xiaochun shouted, his eyes bloodshot. Boom! The ice hand shattered and the ice mountain exploded, sending a powerful shockwave out in all directions. Blood sprayed out of Bai Xiaochun's mouth as he was sent tumbling backward, and for the first time, the statue of Gongsun Waner was harmed by Bai Xiaochun's seemingly insane attack. Popping sounds emanated out as a tremor ran through her. Shockingly, Gongsun Waner's forehead split open, a crack that ran all the way down to her mouth, and was completely terrifying in appearance. The battle had only just begun, but had already reached a completely shocking level. Everyone watching outside was glued to the action, especially because of the fact that Gongsun Waner had only recently become famous by breaking into the top 10. Furthermore, Bai Xiaochun's cultivation base was only in the mid-gold core stage, putting him at a clear disadvantage. Everyone watching the fight was completely shocked. Mid-gold core stage versus late gold core. This Bai Xiaochun has really been hiding his strength. He has frigid chi, and so does Gongsun Waner. This battle is going to be determined by who has better control. I never thought that this Bai Xiaochun would get so far. All of the top 100 Starry Sky Dao Polarity superstars who heard about the matter were moved, and instantly stopped whatever type of cultivation they were currently practicing to watch. Fights like this were not often seen, and in fact, even the superstars in the top 10 came out of their immortals caves to observe. In the battlefield that was the blue trial by fire, Bai Xiaochun was gasping for breath as he stared at the statue of Gongsun Waner. Gongsun Waner had used frigid chi when he fought her back in the Spirit Stream sect, but her control of it in this battle was on a completely different level. She used it with a finesse that left Bai Xiaochun completely shocked. He wasn't sure what method she used to cultivate frigid chi, but however she did it, the results were astonishing, and seemed to surpass his own frigid adept powers. In addition to that, their cultivation bases were not on the same level. He was in the mid-gold core stage, and despite how close he was to a breakthrough, he was not in the late stage. As for Gongsun Waner, considering the fluctuations of her cultivation base, it was obvious that she was in late core formation. "It doesn't matter," he said, his eyes glittering with cold light. "I have to win this fight." He had just used all of the frigid chi at his disposal in a near-suicidal attack, which had resulted in wounding his opponent. As of now, the situation was different than before, and this was the moment in which he needed to clinch a victory. With that, he blurred into motion, using the fleshly body power of his left leg to shoot forward at incredible speed. As he did, he slapped his bag of holding, causing numerous flying swords to emerge, all of which had received multiple spirit enhancements. At the same time, a flash of black light could be seen, which was none other than his renegade dragon horn. The renegade dragon horn formed the center of a sword formation that descended like rain toward the statue of Gongsun Waner. At the same time, Bai Xiaochun's right hand shot out in a gripping motion that flashed with black light, the throat-crushing grasp. However, even as the sword formation descended onto Gongsun Waner, the statue's eyes flashed and her right hand shot up, ripping into her own throat and then, in completely shocking fashion, dragging a spine-like bone sword out of her own body. As the bone sword appeared out in the open, a sound like that of countless screaming souls filled the entire blue trial by fire. As for Bai Xiaochun, he was instantly filled with a sense of profound and deadly danger. Everyone on the outside devolved into cries of shock and astonishment. At the same time, the statue of Gongsun Waner didn't hesitate for even an instant before slashing the bone sword viciously toward Bai Xiaochun's incoming sword formation. The air shattered around the bone sword, as though heaven and earth were about to be destroyed. Everything in the area turned black, with the starkly white bone of the sword shone so brightly that it became the only light in the dimension. One by one, the flying swords began to shatter into pieces, until only the renegade dragon horn was left. Even that couldn't last for very long before cracks spread out on its surface and it began to collapse. In the final moment, it was sent spinning off to the side as the bone sword slashed toward Bai Xiaochun with shocking power. "So, this is your trump card, huh?" Bai Xiaochun murmured, his pupils constricting. At the same time, he slapped his bag of holding, causing a black scale to fly out and block the path of the bone sword. Simultaneously, he took a deep breath and then stretched both hands out wide before pushing them down toward the ground. Eyes shining with bizarre light, it was with the softest of voices that he said, "Water swamp." In the same moment that Bai Xiaochun spoke, the 30,000-meter frozen area suddenly filled with piercing pulses of moisture, water vapor so thick that it made it difficult to see. From a distance, that 30,000-meter area seemed to have been transformed into a frozen swamp. Bai Xiaochun's hair whipped around him as a burst of energy surged out from beneath his feet. At the same time, a brutal and wild aura erupted out, along with a roar that seemed to echo from ancient times, something that left all onlookers' minds spinning. Roar. It wasn't just the cultivators watching the fight who heard the sound. Even cultivators in other areas could hear the echoing cry of some beast. Disciples throughout the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect looked around with flickering expressions, and many of them even cried out in alarm. "What was that? Did you guys hear that? What type of beast makes a sound like that? Heavens! Even though we're outside of the trial by fire, we can still hear it. What kind of divine ability does that?" Meanwhile, on Starry Quarter Rainbow, there was a bright red mountain that rose high into the sky. At the top of the mountain was a young woman with hair like fire, sitting there meditating. She was very beautiful, and seemed to be surrounded by shapeless, invisible flames that would instantly eradicate anyone who got too close to her. Moments before, she had been completely focused on meditation, and hadn't been paying attention to the starry sky Tao polarity superstars trials. But as soon as the beast roar echoed out, she detected it, and her expression flickered as she looked over in the direction of myriad star rainbow. And here I thought Gongsun Waner would be the only one to make it onto the violet portion of the rainbow before the soul hunting expedition. Apparently, I was wrong. That young woman occupied third place among the starry sky Tao polarity superstars, Chen Yushan. She wasn't the only one who noticed what was happening. In a deep cistern on polarity quarter rainbow was a bare-chested young man with thin lips and cold eyes. He seemed like the completely merciless type, and was currently fighting a fierce battle with a host of vengeful souls. Despite the fierce attacks of the souls, they were being efficiently exterminated by the young man. As soon as the roar echoed out, he stopped in place and looked up, his eyes shining with mysterious light. It doesn't matter how many people get onto the violet portion of the rainbow. When the soul hunting expedition begins, I'll kill anyone who gets in my way. This young man was one of the top superstars in the sect, who ranked even higher than Chen Yushan. He occupied second place, and was known by the Taoist name Heretic. Considering that the roar was so powerful even people outside of the trial heard it, there was little need to mention how it affected the statue of Gongsun Waner. Her eyes began to shine brightly, and instead of backing up, she propelled the bone sword toward Bai Xiaochun with even greater speed than before. As it pierced through the air, it emitted ear-splitting whistling sounds. Meanwhile, Bai Xiaochun's murderous aura skyrocketed as he shoved his hands high into the air and shouted. Kingdom. Ear-splitting rumbling sounds spread out as the entire 30,000-meter area turned into a huge, watery swamp. Then, an indescribably large spike rose up like a mountain out of the ground, filling the entire world. Beneath the enormous spike, it was possible to see black, scaled skin. In addition, there were more spikes spreading out all over the creature below. The 30,000-meter area was actually like a window, allowing only a glimpse at the shockingly large beast beneath. As soon as the first huge spike appeared, it smashed into the statue of Gongsun Waner, causing indescribable rumbling sounds to echo out. Everyone watching the scene gasped, and as for those who ranked higher in the starry sky Tao polarity superstars, they seemed to be the most shocked of all. That was especially true of Chen Yushan and Heretic, both of whom looked on with widening eyes. Deafening rumbling sounds filled the entire blue trial by fire, sounds which surpassed heavenly thunder. It was almost like two continents colliding, releasing a destructive shockwave that instantly shattered Gongsun Waner's bone sword into countless fragments. At the same time, her statue dimmed and was covered with countless cracks, as though it might collapse at any moment as she sped backward in retreat. However, her bone sword was by no means ordinary in any way. Despite its physical form having been destroyed, its sword chi still existed, and it actually pierced all the way through the huge bone spike to Bai Xiaochun. This was the first time anyone had ever pierced his water swamp kingdom, and the sword chi moved so quickly that he had no time to evade it. When the sword chi hit him, blood sprayed out of his mouth, and his entire body was racked with pain. Whether it was his bones or his flesh, he felt like he was about to explode, and he tumbled backward like a kite with its string cut. Apparently, these two opponents were evenly matched, and had just seriously injured each other. Everyone on the outside felt their hearts being battered by waves of shock. Not only were they completely shaken by Bai Xiaochun's magical technique, but they were filled with fervor from being able to watch this most ultimate of core formation battles. It was easy to imagine how, even if Bai Xiaochun ended up losing in the end, he would still become quite the center of attention. Both of them are almost on the same level as nascent soul experts. Gongsun Waner is already in the late core formation stage, but this Bai Xiaochun is only in mid-core formation. I asked around, and apparently Bai Xiaochun is from the river-defying sect in the middle reaches, and so is Gongsun Waner. Heavens! I can't believe the river-defying sect is so incredible. Both of the hostages they sent are completely heaven-defying. As everyone discussed the events playing out, back inside the blue trial by fire, the cracked statue of Gongsun Waner looked up, her eyes shining with cold light. Then she reached up and placed her palm onto her forehead. A pop could be heard as her forehead collapsed, and more cracks spread out over her body. However, by opening her forehead, she apparently drew on the truly frigid coldness of her life essence, which erupted out with utter madness. As the frigid chi spread out, cracking sounds could be heard, and everything around the Gongsun Waner statue was frozen. Within the blink of an eye, she transformed into an enormous ice giant, dozens of meters tall. If all that happened was that she became an ice giant, it might not have been a big deal. However, as she grew in size, a frigid chi began to swirl around her that seemed lethally cold, dropping the temperature in the 30,000-meter area so rapidly that, in the blink of an eye, everything was completely frozen. The frigid chi was so powerful that even the air froze, and the land began to crack to pieces. In fact, the only sound to be heard in the dimension were the popping sounds of everything freezing up. Furthermore, Gongsun Waner was only continuing to grow larger. Frigid extermination. Everyone on the outside was so shaken that even the nascent soul experts were watching the fight, some of whom recognized where Gongsun Waner's frigid chi actually came from, leading to exclamations of astonishment. As more and more of the nascent soul cultivators picked up on the clues, their expressions flickered with shock. Even the sect leader of the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect emerged from his secluded meditation facilities to watch the fight. If they had such reactions, there was little need to even consider how everyone else was reacting. Within the blue trial by fire, Bai Xiaochun's face fell as he sensed the exterminating power of the frigid chi. He could tell that, within moments, he would be frozen solid, killed in body and soul. Damn it, how did Gongsun Waner get frigid chi like this? In the critical moment, Bai Xiaochun looked around at everything rapidly freezing, and knew that he only had one option. Living Mountain Incantation. As soon as the words left his mouth, the images of 2 stone golems appeared, one in each of his eyes. At the same time, a stone golem began to take shape around him. After melding with the mountain, you become the mountain, and the mountain becomes you. Rumble. Bai Xiaochun was no longer visible. Instead, what everyone saw was an enormous stone golem dozens of meters high. Instantly, the stone golem emitted an aura that would cause any core formation cultivator to be stricken with shock. Even the nascent soul cultivators were left gasping. As that energy surged out, it slammed into the frigid chi, resulting in a deafening explosion. Soon, cultivators on the outside recognized what it was that they were seeing, causing cries of astonishment to echo out. Even the nascent soul cultivators were shaken. The Living Mountain Incantation. Gongsun Waner's frigid extermination had been shocking enough, but then the Living Mountain Incantation was thrown into the mix, leaving everyone thoroughly flabbergasted. I can't believe someone actually succeeded in cultivating the Living Mountain Incantation. This Bai Xiaochun is completely incredible. Even the sect leader had a very serious expression on his face. Meanwhile, outside of the ravine of endless mountains, Stone Mountain sat there on the boulder, his eyes shining with a strange light. Apparently, his smile was one of excitement. As of this moment, a huge ice giant was facing off against an enormous stone golem, and the energy emanating off of the two was causing the entire blue trial by fire to tremble violently. Die! Bai Xiaochun howled. As soon as Bai Xiaochun shouted, die, a scene of violent destruction played out in front of the eyes of all onlookers. Bai Xiaochun shot forward in a beam of blue light, drawing upon the Living Mountain Incantation and leaping forward with the mountain-shaking bash. The strength of the stone golem bolstered Bai Xiaochun's fleshly body, making it vastly more powerful than before, to a virtually indescribable degree. Furthermore, he moved so quickly that it almost seemed like a teleportation. He pierced through the frigid chi, unleashing a series of sonic booms that crushed everything around him before appearing directly in front of Gongsun Waner. The statue had already been seriously damaged, and of course, was only a statue, not the true Gongsun Waner. As such, it was completely incapable of dodging or evading the attack. Instead, her hands flashed in a double-handed incantation gesture as she attempted to block the strike. Bai Xiaochun's eyes were bright red as he put everything on the line in this last-ditch effort. If he couldn't secure victory at this point, then not only would he lose his chance to advance to the Violet Trial, but he would also be unable to rescue Big Fatty Zhang. That was not an outcome he could accept. There was only one thought in his mind: I have to win. Howling, he closed in, using the stone golem's body to launch a spinning kick with his left leg, which slammed directly into the ice giant summoned by Gongsun Waner's statue. The power of that kick was backed by the fleshly body power of the Undying Live Forever technique, as well as the Living Mountain Incantation and the mountain-shaking bash. Furthermore, it also contained his Undying Hex. It was a devastatingly deadly attack. Rumbling sounds echoed out as the foot sailed through the air, causing the entire blue trial by fire to tremble. The statue of Gongsun Waner attempted to use both arms to block the incoming left foot, but as soon as it made contact, the statue's arms began to collapse. Bai Xiaochun's foot smashed through them like a boulder crushing a drinking glass to land directly on the statue's chest. Almost instantly, the statue's chest began to cave in, and then cracks spread out in all directions. However, the statue wasn't dead yet. All Bai Xiaochun had managed to do so far was destroy an outer layer of ice shields. Although the statue was seriously damaged, it was still able to defend itself. However, as the statue fell back, Bai Xiaochun drew once again upon the power of the stone golem to launch into another mountain-shaking bash, fueling it further with the power of his left leg. This time, he sent the stone golem's hand shooting out, its thumb and forefinger glittering with black light. It was none other than the throat-crushing grasp. Rumbling echoed out as the throat of the statue was crushed, and then, the entire statue began to fall apart. The final move had come as fast as lightning, and was delivered with ruthless efficiency. In the blink of an eye, the ice giant was destroyed, and the statue shattered. As that happened, a beam of teleportation light shot down, which was none other than the entrance to the Violet Trial. Simultaneously, Bai Xiaochun's living mountain incantation faded away, and the stone golem vanished. Bai Xiaochun was revealed in person, his face ashen as he floated down to the ground. Clearly, he was having trouble standing, and even coughed up 3 consecutive mouthfuls of blood. Despite his seeming weakness, though, his eyes shone with a gleam of determination that left everyone in the audience completely shaken. He won. A mid-core formation cultivator fought someone in the late core formation stage, and actually won? Heavens! He just beat the statue of Gongsun Waner. Doesn't that mean that he qualifies to enter the Violet Trial? He's going to become the 10th superstar to be on the violet portion of the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Sect Rainbow. Outside of the trials, everyone was devolving into a huge commotion. Nearly half of the entire Starry Sky Dao Polarity Sect was shaken to the core, even more so than when Gongsun Waner had recently challenged the trials. An uproar was sweeping through the sect, and especially through Sky Quarter Rainbow, where Bai Xiaochun came from. The hubbub there was far more intense than in other locations. Back on that very rainbow, Song Ke was standing outside of his immortals cave, his hands clenched tightly into fists. It was difficult to read his expression, but his heart was filled with bitterness. He simply could not bring himself to admit that he didn't measure up to Bai Xiaochun, but the endless succession of evidence had pushed him to the brink of collapse. Xu Baosai, Master God Diviner, and Chen Manyao were all shaken deeply. Although all of them knew that Bai Xiaochun was no ordinary cultivator, never could they have imagined that he was this incredible. Gongsun Waner was also on Sky Quarter Rainbow, sitting outside of her immortals cave on a boulder, looking up toward the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Superstars trials. She had just watched the entire fight play out between her statue and Bai Xiaochun, and at the moment, a strange expression could be seen on her face. In fact, when her statue collapsed, she actually smiled. So, my sweetie is as awesome as ever. She even clapped her hands softly, a mysterious light flickering in her eyes. Outside of Sky Quarter Rainbow were Chen Yushin and Heretic, both of whom were superstars and chosen from the top 3. They were completely shaken by the battle they had just witnessed. As for Chen Yushin, her eyes shone with a mysterious light, whereas Heretic simply snorted coldly. Although he didn't say anything, the arrogant look in his eyes couldn't have been clearer. Even nascent soul cultivators in the sect had been watching, and were moved by Bai Xiaochun's actions. As of this moment, it was correct to say that within the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect, there wasn't a single person who didn't know Bai Xiaochun. However, even as everyone devolved into exclamations and discussion, someone suddenly cried out. No, wait, look at Bai Xiaochun. He's starting to practice cultivation. In response, more people looked over and saw what was happening. Frigid Qi. Look at the frigid Qi. Bai Xiaochun really was practicing cultivation, although it wasn't intentional. After Gongsun Waner's statue was destroyed, frigid Qi began to spread out from it and fill the blue trial by fire. And since it had nowhere else to go, it began to stream toward Bai Xiaochun. Whether Bai Xiaochun wanted it or not, the frigid Qi began to pour into his body, sweeping through his Qi passageways and heading toward his Heaven Dao Gold Core. It was strong frigid Qi, and in the blink of an eye, it transformed into a vortex with Bai Xiaochun at the center. As it rushed into his gold core, it filled it to 30% capacity, then 40%, 50%, 60%. As more frigid Qi rushed into him, he trembled at the sensation of his cultivation base rising. Before, he had been at the peak of mid-core formation, but as of this moment, he was breaking through into late core formation. It took only a short moment for the overall frigid Qi in his gold core to reach 60%, and yet, it hadn't stopped. His gold core was made from 9 spiritual seas, 60% of which were now a world of intense coldness. And then, Bai Xiaochun shivered, threw his head back and let loose a long cry as his frigid qi reached 70%. The frigid school will evolving incantation involved gathering frigid qi into the gold core, which meant that 30% was the peak of the early stage and 60% was the peak of the mid stage. Earlier, his overall level of frigid qi had reached roughly 60%, but now, having reached 70%, intense rumbling sounds exploded within him as his cultivation base released shocking power. This was the late gold core stage. And things weren't over yet. More frigid qi poured into him, pushing his gold core frigid qi past 70% to 80%. When the final bit of frigid qi was sucked in, his gold core frigid qi capacity had reached 85%, and his cultivation base was still climbing. As of now, he was very close to reaching 100% capacity and being at the great circle of the gold core stage. As his cultivation base rose and his energy surged, the blue trial by fire shook violently, and on the outside, the star that represented Bai Xiaochun shone with blinding light. Everyone outside was completely shaken. This Bai Xiaochun, he actually just had a breakthrough. Late core formation. He just reached late core formation. He could fight late core formation when he was only in mid-core formation. Now that he's in the late stage, doesn't that mean he could fight someone in the great circle? What good fortune. It's all because he cultivates a technique that uses frigid qi. By absorbing the excess frigid qi from Gongsun Waner's statue, he was able to break through. Although it might not have seemed possible, the commotion outside grew even more chaotic. This second time in which Bai Xiaochun challenged the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Superstars trials had involved him pulling off one miracle after another. First was the incredible speed with which he made it through the early trials, then was his victory over a late core formation expert while he himself was only in the mid-stage, and finally was his cultivation base breakthrough. Because of all those things, everyone outside was left reeling. After all, of the group that made up the 9 cultivators who were already in the violet portion of the rainbow, 8 were in the Great Circle, with Gongsun Waner being the only one in late core formation. And yet now, someone else had joined, someone who had entered the group in the mid-stage and then immediately risen to the late stage. As everyone discussed the matter, Bai Xiaochun shivered, and the frigid qi inside of him settled down, placing him firmly in late core formation. However, there was no time for him to probe his cultivation base. Instead, he shot toward the light of teleportation. Even as he did, numerous motes of light in the area swirled together to form another statue. It was a statue of Bai Xiaochun. When he stopped for a moment to look back at it, he saw that it resembled him perfectly, and its aura was very similar to his. However, the statue's expression was cold and blank as it stood there, completely unmoving. Bai Xiaochun took a deep breath. He knew that from now on, anyone who tried to get into the violet portion of the rainbow would have to fight his statue as the last part of their trial. After a moment, he looked away, headed into the teleportation light, and then vanished. Of course, the discussion among the audience didn't die down at all. The events which had unfolded on this day were things rarely ever seen, especially considering that there were now 10 extremely famous cultivators in the sect. It was a momentous, joyous occasion. Because Bai Xiaochun had made his breakthrough after the battle, that meant that anyone who tried to challenge that trial in the future would fight the mid-core formation version of him, not the late-stage Bai Xiaochun from after the victory. That statue represented a certain status in the sect. As long as it remained undefeated, no one would be able to enter the violet trial, and as of this moment, more people were staring at the statue than there had been people watching Bai Xiaochun himself. As for Bai Xiaochun, when he stepped into the teleportation light, he vanished, disappearing from the blue trial by fire and reappearing within the violet trial. Meanwhile, on the violet portion of the rainbow, a 10th star had appeared, and all the eyes that had been focusing on the statue shifted over to look at it. Although no one could see what was happening with Bai Xiaochun now, everyone was wondering. The mere fact that no one knew what was going on in the violet trial made the entire scenario more mysterious. That added level of mystery made everyone want more than ever to know what would happen next. In a short few months, 2 people had reached the violet portion of the rainbow, and the mere thought of what happened inside that violet trial was a motivating force for many other cultivators. As such thoughts filled the minds of all present, Bai Xiaochun appeared within the very violet trial that no one else could see, to find himself in a dimension that was different from all of the other trials by fire. Stretching out in front of him was a river, upon whose bank he stood. A blank look could be seen in his eyes, as though he had forgotten something. Furthermore, as he looked around, he got the sensation that nothing around him was real. What did I forget? He thought in surprise, sitting down on the riverbank to think. However, even after some time passed, the only thing he could remember was his name. All of his other memories seemed to have disappeared. The confusion in his eyes grew deeper. His original plan upon entering the light of teleportation had been to abandon the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Superstars trial as soon as he entered the next stage. After all, by that point, his goal would have been met, and he could request the power of a diva to save Big Fatty Zhang. Time was of the essence. However, as soon as he entered the mysterious Violet trial by fire, he couldn't remember any of that. No, he murmured, I remember that there was something important I needed to do. Frowning, he tried harder to think back to whatever it was that he'd forgotten, and it was in that moment that he suddenly heard someone singing. The voice rose and fell, making the lyrics of the song impossible to make out. However, the person singing seemed old, ancient even. A moment later, a lonely boat appeared on the river. An old man sat in the boat, wearing a wide bamboo hat, and pushing the boat along with a long bamboo pole. Upon nearing the bank, he looked up, revealing a face wrinkled with age. Smiling, he said, Is your heart unsettled? Bai Xiaochun looked up at the old man in the boat. Feeling confused, he replied, I feel like I've forgotten something. Everyone forgets things sometimes, the old man said with a smile. Why don't you come aboard and listen to my ballad? Perhaps that will help you remember whatever it is you've forgotten. Bai Xiaochun sat there quietly for a moment, then rose to his feet and hopped into the boat. With that, the old man pushed on the bamboo pole, and the boat once again began to move down the river. As Bai Xiaochun sat there in the lonely boat, the old man began to sing. Strangely, no matter how closely Bai Xiaochun paid attention, he was unable to make out any of the words the old man sang. After a moment, he couldn't hold back from asking, What are you singing? A folk song, the old man replied. Bai Xiaochun listened for a bit longer, then asked, Does it have a name? It doesn't. Smiling, the old man continued, It's a ballad, the end of which no one will ever hear. 9 other people came before you, and none of them listened to the entire song. The first person listened to it for the longest, but gave up eventually. With that, he continued singing. Bai Xiaochun sat there silently, both listening and also trying to recall what it was that he had forgotten. The water in the river was by no means still, waves rolled back and forth, and after a bit of time, a rather large one hit the side of the boat. As Bai Xiaochun swayed back and forth with the rocking of the boat, his mind stirred, and suddenly, he remembered something. He was in a room with his father, who was gripping his hand tightly as he said, Xiaochun, you have to keep on living. A tremor ran through Bai Xiaochun as that memory sparked a fire which raged through his mind, causing his memories to flood back into him with mountain-toppling, sea-draining power. I have to save eldest brother, he thought, shivering as he remembered everything from before. He suddenly stood up, whereupon the boat vanished, along with the river. The entire room around him was now completely empty. In front of him was the old man, though, who turned and looked at Bai Xiaochun, eyes sparkling with bizarre, mysterious light. Do you see clearly now? The old man asked. Huh? Bai Xiaochun said, Oh, I don't want to participate in this trial by fire. I need to save someone. Now that he had regained his memories, this trial seemed even stranger than before. The old man looked at him for a long moment, and then repeated, Do you see clearly now? Bai Xiaochun was starting to get a bit angry. However, he only got one word out of his mouth before the old man shook his head and interrupted with a sigh. Fine, I know what you're thinking. Get into the Violet trial, and you can ask for a boon from the sect. As long as it's not too excessive, your wish will be granted. For example, your hostage status can be removed. I want the power of a diva. Bai Xiaochun said immediately. The old man nodded. After you leave, someone will deliver it to you. With that, he waved his hand, causing a vortex to spring up in the void, which began to tug Bai Xiaochun toward it. Just before going through the exit, Bai Xiaochun stopped and looked back at the old man, who was walking away from him into the void. Just now, Bai Xiaochun said, You asked if I could see something clearly. What were you talking about? The old man didn't look back. Voice cool, he replied, Your Dao. Bai Xiaochun was confused. The old man continued to walk away, and as Bai Xiaochun sank into the exit, he called out, I'm not sure what my Dao is, but I do have a wish, and that's to live forever. The old man stopped walking, looked back, and smiled. That's your Dao. Rumbling sounds echoed out, and Bai Xiaochun vanished, to appear moments later outside of the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Superstars trials. The first thing that met him was the sound of numerous discussions, shortly after which, his vision grew clear. Almost immediately, he caught sight of countless cultivators looking at him with envy and respect. At the same time, a solemn voice spoke out from the sect leader's portion of Myriad Star Rainbow. Hostage Bai Xiaochun of the River-Defying Sect, your request has been granted. You will be bestowed with the power of a diva. A bright beam of light shot down from the sky to appear in front of Bai Xiaochun in the shape of a crystalline leaf that pulsed with incredible power. Everyone in the area felt incredible pressure weighing down onto them, making it hard to even breathe, almost as if their cultivation bases were being suppressed. Shockingly, that leaf contained wood-type diva power. Furthermore, it was a full portion of power, not just a tiny scrap. When Bai Xiaochun appeared outside of the trials, and the sect leader's voice echoed out, everyone who had been watching his performance was left completely shaken. It only took moments for countless fervent gazes to be turned in Bai Xiaochun's direction. Normally speaking, he would have given everyone an opportunity to approach and offer words of praise. But he was in no mood for that now. As soon as he had that power of a diva, he shot into the sky, transforming into a beam of light that sped directly toward the teleportation portal. He had no idea how much time had passed, and anxiously wished to get back to the Hall of Devil Slayers on Sky Quarter Rainbow to save Big Fatty Zhang. As he left, numerous discussions broke out amongst the audience. Bai Xiaochun was now listed among the absolute most high-level disciples within the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect. He was in the top 10. Although no one was sure of what he had experienced within the Violet trial, they did know that the Violet portion of the rainbow now had a 10th star. It was easy to imagine how, in the days to come, Bai Xiaochun's name would continue to rise to unprecedented heights within the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect. However, Bai Xiaochun was not in the mood to revel in the glory of his achievement. He pushed forward with all the speed he could muster until he was at the teleportation portal, where he vanished, to reappear moments later on Sky Quarter Rainbow. As soon as he stepped off of the teleportation portal there, he saw numerous Sky Quarter Rainbow cultivators gathered, looking at him with expressions of awe as they called out greetings. Greetings, elder brother Bai. Bai Xiaochun was too nervous about Big Fatty Zhang to do more than simply nod in response, and then hurry on his way. Considering he was now in late core formation, he could move faster than ever as he shot off in a beam of light. Literally nothing could have blocked his path, although no one attempted to do so, not even when he passed directly through some of the other 10 halls. Because he was in the top 10 of the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Superstars, he had a special place in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect, as well as special privileges. Thus, he arrived at the Hall of Devil Slayers in less time than it takes an incense stick to burn. Instantly, numerous cultivators emerged to offer formal greetings, their faces filled with respect. Back before he had challenged the trials, everyone in the Hall of Devil Slayers had only pretended to respect him, and secretly scorned him for relying on a powerful backer to become important. Some of them had changed their tune a bit after he got into the top 500. But now that his name was on the violet portion of the rainbow, everything had changed. Greetings, elder brother Bai. Elder brother Bai. More and more people appeared, and more voices rang out. There were some people Bai Xiaochun recognized, including Master Cloud Dao, who was waiting outside the main temple. As soon as Master Cloud Dao caught sight of him, he clasped hands and bowed in deep and exaggerated fashion. Congratulations, elder brother Bai. Master God Diviner, Shu Baosai, and Shen Manyao were also waiting outside of the main temple, and when they caught sight of Bai Xiaochun, excited expressions appeared on their faces. Bai Xiaochun nodded to everyone, then walked into the temple looking very serious. The first thing he saw was the gaunt, skeletal form of Big Fatty Zhang, sitting there cross-legged in the middle of the temple, a pained expression on his face. Clearly, his life force was so faint that it was almost non-existent, and a strong aura of death surrounded him. Had Feng Yu not been there the entire time bolstering him with his nascent soul cultivation base, Big Fatty Zhang would have long since slipped into death. Taoist Master, I've brought the power of a diva. Looking trepidatiously at Big Fatty Zhang, Bai Xiaochun quickly pulled out the wood-type leaf he had just received. Feng Yu looked up and made a grasping motion, causing the leaf to fly over and come to a rest above Big Fatty Zhang's head. Expression somber, Feng Yu performed an incantation gesture and pointed out at the leaf, which began to tremble and emit a greenish glow. At the same time, green strands of energy emerged from the leaf and began to bore into Big Fatty Zhang. Big Fatty Zhang shivered, and the look of pain on his face faded away. Almost immediately, a faint, ruddy glow could be seen on his cheeks, and the mist which surrounded him began to swirl back inside of him. Instead of spreading out in all directions like it had been, it was taking form inside his Dantian region. Seeing that, Bai Xiaochun's nervousness immediately began to fade. Finally, Feng Yu took a deep breath and rose to his feet. With the help of the power of a diva, your eldest brother's core formation should proceed smoothly from here on out. However, he did drain a lot of his life force. The process should take a full half-year before it's complete. He sighed. Fine, you can leave him here for me to watch over. Many thanks, Taoist Master. Bai Xiaochun said excitedly, clasping hands and bowing deeply. Then he looked over one more time to confirm that Big Fatty Zhang was safe, which was when he realized how exhausted he was. The fight with the statue of Gongsun Waner had been a huge draw on both his cultivation base and his energy in general. Coupled with all the anxiety he had felt regarding Big Fatty Zhang, everything returned to hit him at once. Now that he was sure Big Fatty Zhang was safe, he left the temple and returned, not to his immortals cave but rather, one of the empty residences in the Hall of Devil Slayers, where he sat down to do some breathing exercises and recuperate. He rested for 3 days straight. During that time, the commotion which had begun 3 days before continued to sweep through the sect, and Bai Xiaochun's name grew more famous than ever. Soon, the details of his background became more commonly known. As such, the cultivators in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect came to know of the river-defying sect. After all, 2 of the top 10 Starry Sky Dao Polarity superstars were from the river-defying sect. This river-defying sect is extraordinary. It's hard to even wrap your mind around the fact that 2 river-defying sect hostages are in the top 10. I heard that when Bai Xiaochun came from the river-defying sect, he brought some Dao protectors with him. I bet those Dao protectors are incredible too. Slowly but surely, the identities of Bai Xiaochun's Dao protectors came to be known. Song Ke, Big Fatty Zhang, Shu Baosai, Master God Diviner, Chen Manyao. Those 5 names gradually became the subject of much discussion. Shu Baosai didn't think much of the matter, and actually basked in the glory, whereas Song Ke had a hard time accepting it. In fact, on the 4th day, Song Ke left his immortals cave and headed toward the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Superstars trials to prove that, although he might not be Bai Xiaochun's equal, he was still not far behind. Because he was one of Bai Xiaochun's Dao protectors, a lot of people paid attention to his run, and when he ended up being ranked within the 600s, it caused quite a stir. After Song Ke was Chen Manyao, who placed around the same as Song Ke, neither very high nor very low. Master God Diviner didn't really want to go, but ended up being convinced, and after going all out, reaching a rank in the 900s. Shu Baosai hesitated about whether or not to go, and in the end, didn't dare to try. As far as he was concerned, if he couldn't get into the top 1000, then it would be too embarrassing to try. Shu Baosai didn't challenge the trials, but Song Ke, Chen Manyao, and Master God Diviner all did, and it caused the name of the river-defying sect to rise to even greater heights. Eventually, the Peak Lord of Sky Quarter Rainbow personally sent down instructions to notify the river-defying sect of what had occurred, and to give them a bit of a reward. The reward itself didn't count for much, but the Peak Lord's attitude did. Furthermore, the performance of Bai Xiaochun and his Dao protectors ensured that the other 3 great sects in the middle reaches were even more hesitant than before to cause any problems for the river-defying sect. That was especially true because of how both Bai Xiaochun and Gongsun Waner had reached the top 10. The other 3 sects were shocked, and immediately did their best to contact the river-defying sect and improve relations. In response to all of this, the patriarchs of the river-defying sect were very excited. Patriarch Frigid Sect threw his head back and laughed uproariously. Xiaochun. Wherever the kid goes,
Thus,
this episode comes to an end.
Nothing can keep
Remember
him down.
to like
The
and
other
comment
disciples
so we can
in the
discuss
sect
the
were
story
overjoyed,
together, especially Hu
until we meet
Xiaomei
again
and
in the
Song
next
Junwan,
chapters.
as well as Bai Xiaochun's other friends. A month went by in which Bai Xiaochun's name continued to rise in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect, to the point where literally everyone had heard of him, even the devas. As for Big Fatty Zhang, he never awoke, but was in stable condition. He was no longer gaunt and skeletal, and the mist which surrounded him was slowly merging into his body. He had passed the moment of deadly crisis, and within a few months, would have formed his will core and stepped into core formation.